A farming couple, Tori and Kyle Breyer, have long been trying to have a child but without success. That evening, Tori felt a sudden sense of unease, and at some point the air trembled. A meteorite crashed near their home. Soon the couple adopted a boy and named him Brandon. This brought into their lives what they had been missing: parental happiness. Years passed. Tori searched everywhere for Brandon, who loved playing hide and seek. Not finding him anywhere in the house, she went to the barn. At some point Brandon jumped out from behind the corner, playfully scaring her. Life on the farm went on as usual. Kyle adored his wife and adopted son, often making breakfast for them. Brandon often found school lessons boring because he already knew more than the curriculum offered. Because of this, his classmates frequently mocked him, except for Caitlin, who was instead drawn to Brandon's intelligence. Tori enjoyed motherhood and spent her free time painting. This time she got so carried away that she painted late into the night. Sometimes electrical devices behaved strangely in Brandon's presence. He also heard voices and experienced seizures. After one such seizure, the boy opened his eyes, and they glowed red. Then, under the influence of unknown forces, he opened a window and escaped. Hearing strange noises, Tori became worried and went outside to check. Something rushed past right behind her. Calling for Brandon, Tori continued searching and entered the barn, witnessing her son growling and furiously trying to break the wooden boards of the cellar doors. Barely keeping her composure, Tori brought the boy back to his senses, attributing it to sleepwalking. Brandon mentioned that he had heard voices. As she put her son to bed, Tori sang him a lullaby. She lied to her husband, saying that Brandon had only walked around the living room in his sleep. The next day, Brandon helped his father with carpentry. Kyle in turn shared that when he and Tori adopted Brandon, they had no idea how to be parents. But despite all the challenges, it was the greatest happiness. Kyle was planning to go to the store, so he asked his son to mow the lawn. When the boy tried unsuccessfully to start the lawnmower, a surge of rage overtook him, and he hurled the machine a great distance as if it weighed nothing. Astonished, he approached the lawnmower and touched it. Immediately after, it completely broke down. Brandon's 12th birthday was approaching. His aunt and uncle, Marilee and Noah McNichol, gave him a rifle, which Kyle disapproved of, as Brandon was still just a child. The boy insistently demanded that his father give him the rifle. At home, Tori and Kyle discussed what had happened, attributing Brandon's behavior to adolescence. Kyle suggested a weekend camping trip with an overnight stay for the whole family. Tori thought it was a good idea. When the weekend came, the couple was loading things into the car while Brandon ate breakfast with a distant look. Noticing this, Kyle grew concerned and called out to his son. Brandon bit through his fork, barely realizing how it happened. In his room, the couple found drawings with a human anatomy guide, which was certainly unusual for a teenage boy. In the woods, they set up a tent. Kyle decided to have an open conversation with his son about puberty. He also explained that the most important thing in life was to find someone to love, but that sometimes it wasn't shameful to give in to certain impulses. Brandon asked his father if he could do it right now. Confused, Kyle replied that people usually did such things in private. At night, Tori woke up feeling uneasy. Brandon was not in the tent. Caitlin woke up to the sound of music. Her laptop had turned on by itself. Slightly frightened, she closed it, but as soon as she turned away, it happened again. When Caitlin noticed that the window was open, her panic grew. She thought she saw her classmate Brandon behind the curtain. At that moment the girl's mother entered the room, thinking her daughter had simply had a nightmare. Meanwhile, the couple searched for their son throughout the forest. When Tori stumbled upon the boy, she felt unimaginable relief. Brandon said he had just gone into the bushes. Later, Tori consulted with her sister about whether to take Brandon to a psychologist. Brandon began drawing strange symbols in his notebook and did not want anyone to see them. A wolf had been frequenting the Breyers' farm, so Kyle always kept a gun ready, fearing for the livestock and poultry. But this time it wasn't a wolf that sneaked into the barn, it was Brandon, whose presence made the animals restless. When asked if everything was okay, Brandon emotionlessly answered yes. At night, the light in the barn flickered, and the animals continued to go crazy. Kyle went to check what was happening and witnessed something terrible. He rushed to wake his wife. All the chickens were dead. Kyle was certain Brandon had done it because a wolf couldn't have broken the lock and torn the door off its hinges. But Tori refused to believe it. During gym class, Brandon fell, provoking laughter from his classmates. When Caitlin hesitantly reached out her hand, Brandon gripped it so hard that it broke. Caitlin's mother, Erica, who worked at the local cafe, was outraged. Brandon's parents apologized, saying the kids were just playing. Erica couldn't believe her ears. Firmly asking Erica to stop insulting their son, Tori and Kyle were about to take him home. At home, the couple wondered where they had gone wrong in raising their son. Tori confessed to her husband that some time ago, Brandon had been sleepwalking, not around the living room but in the barn, trying to get into the basement. They couldn't accept the possibility that Brandon had seen something that would reveal the secret of his origins, but perhaps he could sense it. While Tori searched online about meteorites, Brandon entered the barn and broke the lock on the basement. Driven by some unknown supernatural force, he levitated into the air. Tori rushed to find her son and discovered him hovering in the barn. Then he fell, right into the basement where something had been hidden for years. Brandon injured his hand, for the first time in his life. Tori was more terrified than ever before. Brandon asked his mother who he was and where he came from. Tori honestly admitted that he was not like other children. 12 years ago, they had found him in the woods inside that strange space object that resembled a capsule. Tori believed that Brandon had been sent to them from the heavens, answering their prayers for a child. He wasn't here by accident. However, Brandon was furious that his parents had lied to him all these years. Running into the house, the boy began throwing things around the rooms, screaming that he hated his parents. Because of her broken arm, Caitlin was excused from school. Suddenly her laptop shut off, and at that moment Brandon appeared, holding a bouquet of daisies. Crying, the girl told Brandon that her mother had forbidden her from talking to him. The boy assured her he would take care of that problem. Erica was about to close up at the cafe when she noticed strange symbols on the fogged-up windows, the same ones Brandon had been drawing in his notebook. Suddenly the lights flickered, and a large LED lamp shattered, cutting Erica's face. She could feel a sinister presence. Brandon appeared here and there, she couldn't react fast enough. Seizing a moment she ran and locked herself in the storage room. But no lock could stop Brandon. With his superhuman strength, wearing a mask and cape, he destroyed the door and attacked Erica. In the morning, Kyle and Tori prepared breakfast as if nothing had happened. Brandon also behaved normally, saying that everything was fine, he had just needed some time to think. The police arrived at the cafe. Despite the mess, it didn't look like a robbery. Erica had disappeared, and her daughter was too shocked to say anything. Then suddenly the sheriff noticed the symbol on the window. The school principal and the sheriff insisted that Brandon start seeing a psychologist. Since his aunt was the only psychologist in the entire county, he was sent to her, even though it might not have seemed entirely appropriate. However, despite everything, Marilee was determined to remain objective. She asked Brandon to open up. The boy stated that he was not like everyone else, he was far more advanced. Marilee found this statement ominous. Rumors that Brandon had attacked a classmate spread throughout the town. Naturally, Kyle couldn't help but feel ashamed of his son. While Kyle and Noah were playing pool, Tori was searching for Brandon around the house, but he was nowhere to be found. Marilee was also home alone, doing some cleaning. When the lights flickered, she didn't notice Brandon's silhouette in the window. Soon the security system announced movement in the backyard. Puzzled, Marilee looked out the window. The outdoor lights went out. At that moment there was a knock at the door. Tori had no idea who would come by so late. She opened the door. Brandon stood on the doorstep and told his aunt that he couldn't allow her to tell the sheriff anything unnecessary about him tomorrow. Marilee explained that she was just doing her job and that his visit at such a late hour was inappropriate, so he should go home. Smiling, Brandon left, or at least pretended to. The security system continued to trouble Marilee, who attributed it to technical malfunctions. Not waiting for her husband, Marilee went to bed, unaware that Brandon was still here. But his plan was thwarted when Noah returned home. Making sure his wife was asleep, he went to brush his teeth when suddenly something rushed past behind him. In his closet, Noah found Brandon wearing a strange mask. The boy, looking guilty, said that Aunt Marilee was helping him with his homework, but of course Noah, angry and frightened, didn't believe his nephew and intended to take him to the parents. Brandon stated that it was a bad idea and using his superpowers, threw Noah against the garage door. Panicked, Noah got into his car and drove along the empty highway. At some point the windshield shattered, and the car stalled. Seeing Brandon hovering in the air ahead, Noah refused to believe his eyes. Suddenly the car began to levitate above the road. Noah screamed in horror. The car crashed back onto the pavement. Noah survived, but with such injuries survival was worse than death. Driven mad with worry, Kyle and Tori tried calling Marilee and Noah, but neither answered. At that moment the boy appeared, notably without his sweater. Brandon said that he had been playing football with his classmates and accidentally got his sweater dirty, after which everyone started laughing at him. When Tori was about to wash her son's sweater, he wouldn't let her. Kyle had a nightmare intertwined with the past, the night they found little Brandon in the woods. Holding the infant in her arms, Tori called him a gift. The couple was awakened by a call from Marilee, and they immediately rushed to the hospital. On the verge of collapse, Marilee told them that Noah had been in an accident and was now in intensive care in critical condition. Learning that Brandon had visited Marilee that night made the couple tense. Noah didn't survive, and Brandon reacted to the news with complete indifference. The parents tried to make him confess how he was involved, but Brandon denied everything. Tori was determined to protect her son to the end, while Kyle demanded that he confess. Suddenly Brandon threw his father against the kitchen cabinet. Shocked, Tori ordered Brandon to go to his room. To prove that their son was a monster, Kyle was determined to find that very sweater. While Brandon was in the shower, Kyle searched through his son's room and found what he was looking for. The sweater indeed had bloodstains on it. But Tori insisted that it didn't prove anything. Kyle urged his wife to be reasonable. If they didn't take action, more people would get hurt. However, Tori wasn't ready to betray her son. Kyle reminded her that Brandon wasn't their son but an alien. Erica was still listed as missing. The sheriff was personally handling this complicated investigation. He had never encountered anything like this before. Calming down, Kyle looked through childhood photos of his son and his adorable crafts. Despite everything, Brandon was still his son. He told his wife that he would take Brandon on a hunting trip in the woods for the weekend, just the two of them, father and son. On Saturday, Tori saw off the two most precious people in her life. Kyle and Brandon left for the forest by car. Soon Sheriff Deaver paid Tori a visit, showing her a photograph of a symbol drawn in blood at the crash site. The same symbol had been drawn on the windows of the cafe where Erica disappeared. It resembled two-letter BS, leading the sheriff to the name Brandon Breyer. Tori claimed she had never seen the symbol before and refused to let the sheriff inside the house. But deep down, she already knew the truth. She confirmed her fears when she found Brandon's journal in his room, filled with drawings of that very symbol and disturbing scenes of his crimes. Kyle had deliberately lured Brandon into the forest to put an end to it all. He aimed his rifle at him and fired, but something went wrong. When Kyle was momentarily distracted, Brandon had already vanished. Kyle took off running, chased by Brandon, whose reflexes were extraordinary. In no time, Brandon caught up to his so-called father and mercilessly took his life. Unable to reach her husband, Tori grew more and more panicked. Now she knew that Kyle had been right about everything. Instead of Kyle, it was Brandon who answered the phone, stating that his father was gone, and that Tori would be next. With Brandon's return, true chaos erupted in the house. Tori, screaming in terror, tried to call 911, but it was no use. However, the call was still registered, and the sheriff was already on his way with backup. The officers sensed that something sinister was happening in the Breyers' home. Hearing their voices outside, Tori tried to escape but Brandon wouldn't allow it. Tori screamed at the officers to leave, and at that moment Brandon instantly took the sheriff's life. Tori and the deputy were trapped. The officer called for reinforcements but the signal was weak. Soon the deputy met the same fate as all of Brandon's other victims. Tori hid under the bed, too afraid to breathe. She managed to slip away just before Brandon looked there. Climbing out through the window, Tori remembered how Brandon had cut his finger on his spaceship and ran toward the barn, with the alien in pursuit. Clearly the spaceship was the only thing that could harm Brandon. Breaking off a shard from the spaceship, she began searching for Brandon and soon found him. He called her mom. Tori told him she had never stopped loving him and removed his mask. Brandon with regret said he wished he could have been good. Hugging the alien, Tori raised the shard to strike him, but he caught her hand. Gripping Tori, Brandon soared into the sky with her, ascending high above the clouds, close to the stars. At some point Brandon let go of Tori, allowing her to fall. Seconds later, a passing airplane caught Brandon's attention. The plane crash and other events became a major sensation, drawing the attention of the FBI. Brandon played the part of the victim, the sole survivor. From that moment on, he began spreading terror across the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.